This is the tale of the most ruthless and powerful king from a chaotic world, reborn into the early medieval era. When he opened his eyes as a newborn baby, he saw his parents gazing at him with eyes full of love and joy. These parents commented that their newborn child bore their features, overwhelmed with happiness at this new addition to their family. The father, named Genos, named his son Etho, and immediately wanted Etho to call him Papaba. However, the mother, named Alice, thought Etho was still too young for that. As the playful parents teased their newborn child, Etho silently wondered who these two people were and why they claimed to be his parents. If this was true, then it meant he had died in his previous life and been reincarnated with his memories intact. Looking up at the starry night sky, Etho could hardly believe that after countless victories and conquering the world, the gods had now sentenced him to be a powerless infant to humiliation he could barely bear. Etho did not hate his current life since both parents cared for him lovingly, but he was far from satisfied. He hated wearing diapers and lived with a constant fear that someone might harm him. The only thing he could do was clench his fists tightly in vigilance. Noticing this, Etho's father seized the moment, placing his finger into Etho's little hand to show his wife just how much their son loved his father. Etho tried to move but squeezed too hard and accidentally soiled his pants. Now it was up to his mother to clean up. The shame nearly brought Etho to tears. He just wanted this strange dream to end, but unfortunately this was the harsh reality he had to face from now on. Setting that aside, Etho witnessed something even more extraordinary. His father could wield magic to enhance his strength. His mother also possessed magic, using it to heal his father's wounds. Etho wondered how magic worked, as this power was something unknown in his previous life. He was utterly captivated and yearned to see more. To do that, he realized he had to grow up first. Meanwhile, his father ventured into the forest and defeated a monster using magic enhancement. Soon after, his group of friends arrived to play. Take a close look, they're all important characters. Back to Etho. With nothing else to do, he observed his surroundings, absorbing as much knowledge as possible because knowledge is power in any world. Genos returned home from the hunt, and Etho began to wonder if this was a society where everyone was allowed to own weapons. If so, that meant the outside world was even more dangerous. He figured that's why everyone needed weapons. The only reasonable conclusion was that he had to gain strength as quickly as possible to adapt to this world. Etho had 1,000 questions, but sadly couldn't ask them yet. Despite all the discomfort, he still felt happy to experience these precious warm moments with his parents. In his previous life, Etho never even slept peacefully, hunted every night by assassins. Now finally living in peace, he was starting to get used to this new life. In those early days, after many weeks, maybe even months, Etho learned to crawl, and with eager eyes, he hurried to the mirror to admire just how handsome his reflection was. Mastering the art of movement, he began sneaking out of bed whenever his parents were away, driven by an insatiable curiosity. His secret destination was the library, where he grabbed a book yearning to understand this new world. There, he uncovered that the continent of his birth was called Dikan, divided into 3 kingdoms: the dwarven realm of Dav, the elven kingdom of Elena, hidden deep in the forest, and another yet to be revealed, and finally the kingdom of Sapin, where humans, including himself, resided. Etho's homeland followed a strict line of succession, unlike his previous world, where anyone could seize the throne through violence. After gathering some fundamental knowledge about this new world, Etho searched for a book on magic. With his tiny hands, he reached for it on the shelf. As he held the book, he couldn't help but reminisce about his past life, which was far more modern than this one. The book would help him understand the reasons behind the vast differences. He intended to study magic, known in this world as mana. Mana could only be passed down from generation to generation, and appeared in only a select few. Moreover, only 2 forms of mana existed in this world: enhancement, which boosted physical abilities, and summoning, which allowed users to unleash and control it at will. Reading this, he recalled his mother's abilities, clearly indicating she was a summoner. Every individual with mana possessed a mana core, which most mages began to harness during puberty. Mastery of this would allow them to become true wizards. Etho found this concept reminiscent of something he was familiar with. However, doubts lingered in his mind about whether he could apply this newfound knowledge. Just as he was about to unlock his inner strength, his mother, Alice, unexpectedly interrupted him. She picked him up and observed him closely. Initially, Etho feared she had discovered his secret, only for her to comment on his recent mishap. Indeed, the scent was unmistakable. As Alice changed his diaper, Etho felt a wave of despair wash over him, realizing this little body was becoming an inconvenience. He vowed to gain power as quickly as possible. Alice spent her time documenting Etho's life, pleased with his progress in this new world. However, she couldn't shake the sadness from her heart, knowing Etho had never smiled at them. Just thinking about it made her feel downcast. Looking out the window, she saw her husband teaching though, how to wield a sword. He was so excited to share their son's progress with Alice, but she was furious that he would teach such a dangerous skill to a child. It was clear who wore the pants in the family. Alice believed Atho was far too young to learn swordsmanship and gave her husband a stern talking to. Meanwhile, Atho watched them closely, realizing who truly held authority in their home. Hours later, Alice took Atho to the market, and he was filled with excitement at everything he saw. Each item he laid eyes on felt like a new lesson waiting to be discovered. Now, he understood why infants often stared in wonder, especially at things he had never seen in his previous life. He was even able to observe magic up close, a thrill he could hardly contain. As they made their way home, he began to drift off, yet he could still feel the warmth of family surrounding him. When they returned, Alice carried Atho to his room. On the way, she shared how happy she felt whenever she caught him sneaking out of bed to read, or curiously exploring during their market trips. She believed he had inherited that thirst for knowledge from his father. Ultimately, she concluded that one day he might leave home to embark on his own adventures, though she hoped he would lead a more peaceful life. That night, Atho watched his father perform some magic, exhilarated to learn so closely. He observed Reynos lifting stones from the ground, only to have them instantly flatten. Just as disappointment threatened to rise, Alice appeared to reassure him that Reynos was only getting started and urged him to pay closer attention. In that moment, Reynos intensified his magic and showcased some advanced skills. Watching this, Atho realized his father was an enhancer, someone who used mana to boost physical abilities. Instantly excited, he yearned to try a technique of his own. However, that sweet dream was abruptly interrupted when his mother announced it was time for bed. As she carried him to his room, he spotted a book on the shelf and pointed at it, crying out to read. After some charming antics, Alice finally relented and allowed him to read a little. As he began to read, he reflected on all the knowledge he had accumulated to create a mana core for himself. He focused on channeling mana from all parts of his body to converge a single point. He practiced diligently, and just when his parents thought he had fallen fast asleep, a loud explosion erupted from within the house. Instantly, Reynos rushed in to protect his wife, sustaining burns on his back. After confirming Alice was safe, they both remembered Atho was alone in the house. They dashed inside, stunned to find Atho hovering in midair. They could only stand frozen, watching him gently float back down. But the moment he touched the ground, the roof began to collapse, as he was just a child and unable to dodge. Yet his parents immediately rushed in to shield him, saving him from an early reunion with his ancestors. Soon after, the family burst into tears. Atho realized that Alice and Reynos would do anything to protect him, a feeling of safety he had never experienced in his previous life. Then a glimpse into Atho's past was revealed. He was once known as King Grey. A royal advisor had been caught scheming to assassinate him. According to the law, he should have faced capital punishment. Instead, the king's council decided to exile him along with his entire family. Deep down, everyone knew a fate more brutal than death awaited them there. One day, Atho was home alone when his parents rushed back, only to freeze in awe as they saw him floating midair. Their hearts stopped at the surreal sight, helplessly watching him descend. But the moment his feet touched the ground, the roof began to collapse, too swift for Min to dodge. Yet his parents leapt forward, shielding him from a fate that would have reunited him too soon with the beyond. Tears streamed freely as the family embraced, and in that fragile moment, Atho realized that Alice and Genos would move mountains to protect him, a sanctuary of safety he'd never known before. Later, a shadow of his past emerged. Atho, once known as King Grey, a royal retainer caught plotting assassination, was supposed to face public justice. But instead, the king's council chose exile for him, and his family a sentence harsher than death whispered among the court. Desperate and terrified, the assassin knelt, begging Grey to spare his family. Yet Grey's eyes, cold and unwavering, decreed a merciless sentence, execution of the wife and daughter before his very gaze. Not out of hatred, but a grim mercy, a chilling testament to Atho's ruthless resolve. It's almost unthinkable that the innocent-faced child before us once bore a heart hardened by such grim decisions born of necessity and unyielding determination. This stark duality defines Atho's complex soul. Now, Atho spends time with his father Reynos, who gifts him a pair of battle gloves identical to his own. But Atho refuses, clutching instead to his wooden sword, believing the gloves would limit his reach and trap him in a corner. Reynos smiles, understanding, and they begin their usual sword training. But today is different. Mid-duel, Atho reveals he's learned to enchant his wooden sword. With a swift, unexpected strike, he disarms Genos. For the first time, Atho triumphs, leaving Genos stunned, speechless, caught off guard by his son's meteoric growth. At dinner, Reynos decides it's time to find Atho a real teacher, realizing he could be the one holding his son's progress back. Alice opposes, fearing their 4-year-old will be alone in the city. But Renos insists magic amplification is the key to Atho's future. Their heated debate at the table ends with Atho proposing a simple solution. Both parents will accompany him to the city. This way, Renos finds a teacher, and Alice stays close. The family agrees, packing for the move. Soon, Genesis' adventuring party, the Two Horns, personally escorts Atho and his family to Jira City. Introducing himself, Atho meets their leader, Adam, who vaguely recalls a past encounter but doubts a child like Atho remembers. But Atho does remember especially the day he blew up their house. The Two Horns came to rebuild it, and Atho overheard their conversation, learning his parents once belonged to the group before choosing a quiet life. After Adam's chat, Angela hugs Atho tightly, almost suffocating him. Den Yuong, another member, pulls him free. Atho notices a young girl watching silently from atop the carriage, Jasmine, whose gaze feels cold and distant. Drawn into her piercing eyes, Atho is interrupted by Helen, who warmly shakes his hand and introduces both herself and Jasmine on her behalf. With introductions complete, their journey to Jira begins. Atho quietly reflects on the primitive transport compared to his old world, where flying cars were normal. Yet he's not bothered especially with his mother's constant care during their rests along the way. But danger soon finds them. A wild wolf pack attacks, thrusting Atho into the harsh reality of this world's peril. Jasmine steps forward, expertly dispatching the wolves with her daggers. Venos, Adam, and the Two Horns join the fight, swiftly ending the threat. Atho, though only watching, feels a spark ignite within a fierce longing for his own battles ahead. That night's celebration reveals Alice's silence, claiming she's full. But Atho senses something amiss. When she notices a wound on Genesis' arm, she rises to heal him, and the atmosphere shifts everyone silently on alert. They guard against prying eyes because healing magic is rare and hunted in this world. It seems the reason Genos and Alice live hidden on that lonely hill is to shield her healing gift from a dangerous world. This revelation adds layers to their exilia poignant testament to the sacrifices made for safety and love. Atao realized they were on high alert because healing magic was a rare and sought-after skill in this world. It seemed the only reason Xenos and Alice lived hidden away in a desolate hill was to protect Alice's healing abilities from the prying eyes of the world. After the feast, Adam borrowed a thou from his parents, eager to spar with the boy and test if he was truly as skilled as Genos claimed. The rest of the group was also curious about the potential of this young prodigy. They gathered around, but Atao, only 4 years old, wondered if anyone was even worried about him. Still, this would be Athao's first battle against someone other than his father. Unlike Genos, who fought with a wooden stick, Adam wielded a real spear, albeit with its tip wrapped for safety. As soon as the match began, Adam wasted no time empowering his spear with magic. Athao did the same, but took it a step further, channeling mana into his legs to boost his speed dramatically. In the blink of an eye, he lunged forward, landing the first strike before Adam could even react. He then slipped smoothly between Adam's legs, creating distance that left the group in awe of his astounding speed and accuracy. The battle grew more intense as they clashed head-on, but the gap in their strength quickly became apparent. Athao, still so small, was sent flying by Adam's attack. The impact sent him soaring, and he became acutely aware of how light and fragile his body felt against such force. Just before he crashed down hard, Angela used wind magic to gently lower him, softening the blow. Dan quickly stepped in, scolding Adam for being too rough with a child and reminding him to hold back. Adam raised his hands in surrender, admitting he got carried away, but it was only because Athao's technique had completely caught him off guard. Deep down, he wondered how the child had been trained to become such a monster at just 4 years old. Turning to the side, he noticed Jasmine staring at him with an odd expression, eager to know how he did it, and begging him to teach her. Seeing her emotionless face, Athao concluded she wouldn't give up until she achieved what she wanted. The next morning, the group resumed their journey, soon stopping in a quiet place for Athao to continue his training. Adam taught him how to use a spear while his father showed off some weak Jim Bro-style moves. Then Helen taught him archery, and it didn't take long for him to master it. After finishing their training for the day, he began teaching Jasmine what she asked for, and she absorbed it quickly. That evening, while he was reading, Jasmine kept staring at him, as if he had captivated her. Before long, she began to act like a shadow, following him. The next day was Atao's birthday, and Jasmine gifted him a dagger. To the surprise of the other girls, she even explained how to use the dagger. After being bombarded with so much affection, Adam declared they would set off immediately. His mother, Alice, called him back, and he noticed she didn't look well. When he asked her what was wrong, she reassured him that she was fine, though he didn't quite believe it. As they continued their journey, they were suddenly ambushed by a group of bandits on the road. As this unfolded, everyone instantly jumped from the carriage into fighting stances. The bandits fired a volley of arrows at them, but Angela used a magical shield to block them. Peering outside, Athao realized they were severely surrounded. Meanwhile, the leader of the bandits, with a cube-shaped head, ordered his men not to harm women and children, as he intended to sell them for a high price. Soon after, the bandits charged in for a fierce attack. Alice was clearly terrified, trying to reassure Athao to stay calm. Before the bandits could get too close, Dan pushed them back with a powerful strike. Genos delivered rapid punches, and as one bandit attempted to attack, Helen shot an arrow through him. Adam sliced through the bandits with his spear, while Jasmine attacked them with her dagger. Witnessing all this made Athao acknowledge that the members of the group were highly skilled. However, with the bandits outnumbering them, they couldn't hold them off for long. After a while of fighting, the group began to tire, while the bandits kept coming relentlessly. Before long, they slammed into the carriage, knocking Genos unconscious. This caused the ugly leader to advance toward Alice and Athao. Seeing Genos in that state, the two of them immediately ran from the carriage. But just then, Genos regained consciousness and urged them to retreat. Though he was clearly severely injured, he still tried to act as if he were fine. He urged Athao to take his mother away from there. Hearing that, the coolest kid on the planet insisted on staying to fight alongside them, but his father revealed that his mother was pregnant. This revelation helped Athao understand why she had looked so tired. Meanwhile, Genos insisted he must leave immediately, and assured Athao that he trusted him to protect his mother and unborn sibling. Athao hurriedly pulled Alice away to flee. The leader, furious, ordered his men to stop them, but Dan rushed in to block their path, just as Athao and Alice were about to be captured. Adam and Jasmine threw daggers at the bandits to clear a path for them. Soon, all the members of the group began to coordinate to help Athao and Alice escape, while they remained facing the bandits. As they ran, Athao reflected on his past as a soul stealer, now terrified of losing his own soul. Just thinking about it made him furious, but his tiny legs could do nothing but continue to run for dear life. After a while of fleeing, Athao sensed an attack coming down from the mountain and looked up to see a suspicious figure preparing to strike them with magic. As danger chases them to the brink, Athao senses an attack descending from the mountain. Looking up, he sees a sinister figure ready to strike with magic. Instinctively, he pushes his mother away but is hit, losing balance, and begins to fall off the cliff. Falling toward the abyss, Athao vows not to descend into the afterlife alone. With Jasmine's dagger, already tied with a cord, he throws it at the attacker, hooking his leg and pulling him down alongside him. Meanwhile, Dan and Angela desperately cast spells to save him, but he's too far. As he plummets, Athao contemplates his existence, while his mother stretches out her arms above, hoping to grasp and pull him back from the void. The moment hangs between life and death. The near loss of his child brought tears to her eyes, yet Arthur felt a quiet satisfaction he had protected his family, even if it meant risking his own life. Though he mourned the loss of his dream to be an older brother, that desire no longer held weight. Then, against all odds, Arthur survived the fall. He awoke to face a colossal, terrifying monster. The sight froze him in fear, speechless. Suspecting a trap, Arthur struck first, but with a mere wave of her hand she sent him crashing into the rafters. She reassured him she was no enemy, then rose to pluck some magical fruits from a mysterious tree, offering them to him. Believing he needed nourishment to heal, Arthur could hardly believe such a fearsome creature was acting like a gentle mother. Still skeptical, the pain in his wounds soon overwhelmed him, and tears streamed down his face. The monster promised to answer all his questions, so Arthur devoured the fruit eagerly. Once his conditions were met, he asked if his parents were safe. She explained that though confined by spatial limits in the cave, she knew his family had defeated the raiders and left days ago. Relief washed over Arthur knowing his mother, father, and unborn sister were unharmed. He thanked the monster who had saved his life. Unsure what to call her since no one really knew, she introduced herself as Sylvia. It became clear she harbored deep secret. Over the next few days under Sylvia's care, Arthur continued eating the magical fruit that accelerated his healing. Now able to move, he yearned to return home. But Sylvia warned that they were trapped in a domain crawling with beasts and bandits. Alone, Arthur wouldn't survive a single day. Yet Sylvia devised a plan to help him escape, unwilling to watch a child live apart from family. Summoning her remaining magic, she began opening a rift in space. While waiting, Arthur spent his days honing his swordsmanship. His mind swirled with questions about the monstrous creature's hidden truths, why she cared so much, and the gaping hole in her chest. Yet Sylvia never spoke of herself, leaving him in the dark. After training, he meditated to boost his mana, catching Sylvia's attention. She revealed a secret, even more fascinating technique to draw mana from the environment while casting spells. Sylvia explained that humans' rigid ideas about mana often block this simultaneous flow. Many beings like her could naturally gather and use mana at once, never fearing depletion. She added that magical beasts mastered this easily. Then she asked Arthur if he wanted to learn this skill. Excited, he agreed without hesitation. She never spoke a word about herself, leaving him lost in mystery. After training, he sat in meditation to deepen his Mananact that caught Sylvia's sharp eye. She then revealed an even more fascinating secret, a way to draw mana from the world around while casting magic. Sylvia explained that humans' rigid beliefs about mana are the very chains that hold them back from gathering and using it simultaneously. But creatures like her flow naturally between both, never fearing mana's depletion. She added that magical beasts could do this effortlessly, as easy as savoring candy. Then she asked Arthur if he wanted to learn this skill. Without hesitation, his eyes sparkled with eager excitement. But before teaching, Sylvia posed a single question. "Why do you want this skill?" Arthur answered honestly, craved strength. Strength to protect those he loved by defeating anyone who dared threaten them. That innocent reply earned him a gentle but firm tap on the head. Sylvia said he'd missed the mark. She refused to teach someone driven by hate. Yet Arthur argued that hating enemies is only natural, drawing from bitter memories as the strongest king in a past life. Sylvia sensed a deadly resolve burning deep inside Arthur's heart. She explained that hurting others is never what humanity strives for. After a moment of hesitation, she apologized for hitting him too hard, but also reminded him that the hands capable of destruction are the same hands that can offer gentleness. She wanted him to understand that it is better to be kind to others, for anger, hatred, and violence only leave behind sorrow. She had saved his life out of compassion, and didn't want that act of kindness tainted by bitterness. As Arthur began to grasp her teachings, she posed another question. "When you become strong, what will you use that power for?" Arthur recalled memories of time spent with his parents and their friends, answering that he wanted to be stronger to protect those he loves. This time, Sylvia nodded in acceptance. Meanwhile, on a nearby cliff, another creature appeared, resembling Sylvia. He revealed that he had been searching for her as she had fled from his kingdom. Another flashback took us to Arthur's past life, where he found himself in a royal palace. After awakening that morning, he visited the office of a subordinate, a congressman. Arthur bluntly stated that he was merely a king in name, while real power lay in the hands of the parliament. In a world where resources were dwindling and birth rates were declining, Arthur believed he was just playing the role of a violent tool. His subordinate tried to soothe him with flattery. Regardless, Arthur left, and shortly after, he was mysteriously assassinated. Just when Arthur was about to use the new power Sylvia had granted him, memories of his past life flooded back. He realized not everyone was lucky, but all he had ever tried to do was unlock the potential to wield his power. In that moment, a wave of overwhelming power crashed over him. Yet the question remained, what would he do with this newfound strength? As he practiced with the flowing energy within him, Sylvia unexpectedly tossed him against a rock. Confused, he wondered what was happening. Why was the one who cared for him hiding him away? She assured him not to be afraid, but that he must stay still for a while. From inside the rock, he witnessed an incredible surge of power. Another creature, identical to Sylvia, emerged. This being had tracked her down by the scent of blood, demanding she return to him immediately, but she refused. Sylvia was ready to fight to the death. As the creature revealed himself, she transformed into her true form. The entire area froze as she exhaled a chilling breath. She was indeed a dragon of unparalleled might. Seeing her true form, the creature warned that if she used that kind of power, she would die. But she was unbothered by death. For her, life had been fulfilling, and she accepted her fate. Despite the price being her life, she refused to surrender. They charged into a fierce and terrifying battle. Arthur could only watch helplessly from within the cave. He was overwhelmed by the power of both. As predicted, the creature retaliated fiercely, seemingly gaining the upper hand, until Sylvia unleashed her trump card, freezing the entire area, subduing the creature before opening the cave for Arthur to exit. As he stepped out, he was stunned. He saw her true form. She was a dragon. She opened the sky above and told him he could leave now. She had granted him the power to help him find his way home. She asked him what he would do with that strength, hoping he wouldn't let anger or hatred consume him. Arthur replied that he would use that power to protect his family. She smiled, not wishing for him to live a life filled with sorrow or hatred. To her, strength was not for fighting or revenge. Instead, she hoped he would spread love to others. His answer deeply moved her. Before letting him go, she handed him a dragon egg and a feather, instructing him to wrap the egg with the feather. Then, she touched him, causing a surge of intense energy to flood through him. A beam of light erupted from his finger to his arm, tearing his shirt, revealing the glow beneath. She admitted that she could have sent him home sooner. She always knew how. Arthur had thought she kept him there because it was too dangerous to return. But she revealed the truth. She cherished him, and having someone to talk to and bond with was something she hadn't experienced in a long time. His presence was a precious gift, and he truly valued the time spent with her. He had learned so much from her. With tears in his eyes, Arthur regretted that he couldn't do anything to protect Sylvia. He remembered how she had taught him so much, even granting him strength. She had treated him with all her love and care. Yet, he couldn't save her, not even once. He felt immense sorrow. He cried, recalling the promise he had made to her. He felt like a failure, but all of that no longer mattered to Sylvia. She had lived a fulfilling life. With a gentle smile, he told her that he didn't care what she was, whether a dragon or a monster. The only thing he knew was that she was family. She teased him, asking how he could call her family when he had a mother waiting at home. After a moment's thought, he smiled and said, "Then you are my grandmother." Just that one word pierced her heart, a direct shot to her soul. Even for Sylvia, a dragon, that emotion was overwhelming. She started to cry, asking him to call her that again, and he complied. At that moment, when he called her, Sylvia quietly lay down, content with her life. Ather took the egg and feather she had given him, and the sky opened up. It was time to leave, but he didn't want to go. He begged her to come with him, but she didn't respond, and the passage closed. Feeling fulfilled with life, he softly told her he didn't care if she was a dragon or a monster. The only thing he knew was that she was family. She teased him, asking how he could call her family when he already had a mother waiting at home. After a moment's thought, smiled and said, "Then you're my grandma." Just that single word made her heart ache, piercing straight through her soul. Even Sylvia, a dragon, was overwhelmed by that emotion. Tears streamed down her face as she asked him to say it again, which he did, and right at the moment he called her that, Sylvia quietly lay down, satisfied with her life. Arthur carried the egg and feather she gave him as the sky opened wide. It was time to leave, but he didn't want to go. He begged her to come with him, but she didn't answer. The gateway closed. As he departed, Sylvia unleashed the sealed world, and her opponent regained power. Suddenly, she collapsed to the ground, appearing dead. The creature approached, doubting that someone as strong as her could fall from such a small attack. He stepped closer to examine, but Sylvia was only feigning death. When he drew near, she opened her eyes and unleashed a massive mana-burst and unstoppable force. No one could survive. The whole cave shook, and the explosion cracked through the earth above. Meanwhile, through tears, Arthur continued his journey home. Her voice echoed across the sky, reminding him not to forget their conversation. She understood sorrow is inevitable, but begged him to smile through it. He shouldn't fight or seek revenge fueled by pain, yet he felt incapable of doing so. She advised him not to force a smile right away. Take it slow. One step at a time, change the world bit by bit. Though Arthur doubted himself, she reminded him of his true self. He is King Grey, the mightiest king, capable of anything. She pleaded with him not to let anger and grief consume his heart, but to live a happy life. Arthur was surprised to learn she had always known his true identity. Finally, her voice faded into the wind. Now back on Earth, Arthur carefully placed the gifts she gave him into his bag. With renewed determination and strength, he started his journey home, intent on changing the world with happiness, one step at a time. Will this resolve last? Arthur sped through the forest using mana, careful not to break Sylvia's dragon egg. As he leapt from tree to tree like a monkey, he suddenly heard voices. Approaching, he hoped this group would lead him to the city where his family awaited. But as he landed on a branch above, he realized they were actually 4 bandits cornering a young elf girl to sell as a slave. Arthur had faced a similar group days before. They tried to capture him and his mother for sale. Believing these were from the same gang, he decided to punish them. Meanwhile, the slave traders shoved the girl into a wagon, preparing to leave the forest. Witnessing this, Arthur's fury ignited. But recalling Sylvia's advice, he restrained himself and silently followed the wagon until nightfall when they camped. Arthur could choose the safer path, tracking them to the human town unseen. But that meant abandoning the elf girl. Still, he waited until midnight to act. The bandits used horned wolves to pull their wagon, and Arthur hatched a plan to confuse them. He threw stones to provoke the wolves into a furious howl. One bandit tried to silence them, fearing the noise would attract dangerous creatures, and kicked a wolf. Seizing the moment, Arthur crept behind him, infused his right hand with mana to sharpen it, and knocked him out. Then he grabbed the bandit's knife and ruthlessly took down the second slaver. The third sensed something wrong, but before he could react, Arthur slashed his leg. The bandit immediately alerted the leader about a child using magic. The leader remained unbothered, focused on the hefty profit awaiting him, confident he could capture Arthur. He tossed his sword aside, not wanting to damage the soon-to-be-sold merchandise, then charged barehanded at Arthur, who dodged the first strike and tried to use his thread technique from before to snatch the weapon. But the battle-hardened leader saw through the trick and kicked Arthur away. Grabbing his leg as if Arthur were mere trash, he declared this the end. But for Arthur, it was only the beginning. He ignited the leader's left leg with a sudden fire spell, driving him into a furious rage, hell-bent on killing Arthur. The leader snarled that he'd sell the kid's ugly corpse to some twisted collectors. While the leader ranted, Arthur used his thread technique to launch his knife straight through the leader's chest, ending him instantly. The third bandit, still alive, begged for mercy, promising to atone for his sins. But Arthur knew those pleas were lies. Moreover, he couldn't leave any witnesses to his crimes, so he sent the bandit to meet his ancestors as well. Then he entered the wagon, removed the blindfold from the frightened elf girl, and reassured her she was safe and could return home. She was confused and worried seeing Arthur covered in wounds. Understanding children aren't used to such cruelty, Arthur quickly covered the bandits' bodies before she could see. She grasped the gravity of the moment, her worry evident as she saw Arthur battered and bruised. Understanding that children aren't used to such harshness, Arthur quickly covered the fallen bandits' bodies before the young girl could see. He spun a tale that the villains had perished in some accident and the innocent girl believed him without question. Arthur gathered useful items for the journey ahead and prepared to leave. But the elf girl stopped him, clutching his hand with a desperate plea not to leave her alone in this dangerous forest. She shared stories her parents told her, tales of tree spirits lurking in these woods, devouring children. Though those were just bedtime stories meant to scare kids into sleep. Still, Arthur realized he had no choice but to escort her safely home. Using her innate sense of direction, she said her home lay to the south, the exact opposite of where Arthur intended to go to find his own parents. When asked why she was trapped here, the girl confessed she'd chased butterflies into the forest and lost her way. Arthur grimaced at the classic cliché. Memories of his own childhood imprisonment flooded back. Determined the girl wouldn't suffer the same fate, he agreed to take her home. However, the elf girl refused to keep using the horned wolves for travel, warning that these creatures would perish if held captive too long. The next morning, the two brave kids set off on foot through the forest, and Arthur finally asked her name. She introduced herself as Tessia. She then asked his name, and he answered. As they walked on, he guessed she must be hungry, so he handed her a bowl and told her to sit and eat. Though not hungry, he insisted it was best to eat and keep strength for the long journey ahead. That moment stirred memories of Sylvia, who once told him the same: eat even when you're not hungry because you need the strength to carry on. Suddenly, he realized he was sounding just like her, and a smile crept onto his face. It makes sense being around someone long enough. You start to pick up their words and ways. After preparing the meal for Tessia, she scrunched her face, complaining the food smelled strange. Seriously, after saving her life and feeding her, she still had the nerve to complain, kids, right? Arthur promised to add some herbs to improve the flavor, but it still didn't suit her taste. He realized he never truly had a childhood. Meals were just fuel to survive, never something to savor. Seeing her like that helped him finally understand what childhood really means. Tessia then complained she craved something sweet, but out here in the wild, that was just a dream. Their journey continued, proving to be quite an adventure. Arthur asked about her city, and Tessia showed him the mana streams she used to chase, saying her homeland was full of them. She also shared her excitement about unlocking her mana so she could study under a master. Arthur was surprised he didn't know elves had schools. When he asked more, she seemed confused by the question. They walked until night fell, and Arthur set up a tent for Tessia to sleep. He heard the howls of the horned wolves he had released earlier and worried they might attack. Regret washed over him for not killing them when he had the chance. Tessia crawled into the tent and told Arthur to sleep too, but as the protective older brother, he insisted on staying outside to keep watch. She argued back that her grandfather once said men and women shouldn't sleep in the same tent, but this time she'd make an exception and promised to keep it a secret. When Arthur still refused, Tessia crawled out, scared. She said if he stayed outside, the danger he was trying to block would notice and come for her. For her safety, Arthur agreed to sit inside the tent. Inside, the girl began chatting about humans, saying they were skillful and had many wives. Good heavens, Arthur tried to correct her, but she had already fallen asleep. Finally, he too drifted off. The next day, their journey resumed. From leaping over mountains to walking on water, Arthur was proving himself every step of the way. No additional content to rewrite for this segment. 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 He was an incredible big brother. Being with the little girl made him rediscover what childhood innocence truly means. Yet, this journey seemed endless, and honestly, worry for his own parents began to creep in. Meanwhile, Tessia started to feel at ease by his side. The little girl spoke freely, like an old friend. Along the way, Arthur suddenly felt a sharp pain deep within his magical core. Tessia thought he was just tired and hurried off to find some herbs. Leaning against a wall, the pain grew worse. And then, out of nowhere, a horned wolf appeared. Perfectly timed for disaster, Tessia returned with what she called herbs. Arthur, still playing the protective big brother, shouted for her to run. He expected the wolf to attack, but instead, it dropped a chunk of meat from its mouth and walked away. Tessia smiled brightly and said, "That's a reward for good kids do think we're good." They cooked the meat, and with the first bite, Tessia's joy was unstoppable. It tasted far better than that strange dish earlier. Yes, when a child discovers something delicious, gratitude overflows like a river. When Arthur tasted it, he finally understood why kids crave sweets. It was a flavor that made him wish he'd known such joy before. Tessia confessed she had only found mushrooms, not herbs, and that women in her city often ate poisonous ones by mistake. Arthur let his guard down and took a bite, only to grimace instantly. He had to rush to the bushes countless times, the taste now unbearable. His stomach churned with pain he couldn't bear. Night fell, and they returned to their tent. His eyelids felt heavy from exhaustion and stress. All he wanted was sleep, but Tessia's sweet voice kept filling the air with stories from books about humans and dwarves she had read as a child, and her dreams of meeting them. Yet, she said she couldn't, having heard humans were cruel and not knowing what to do. Arthur dozed off as she spoke, and Tessia, the gentle little sister, softly covered him with a blanket. The next morning, their journey resumed. Arthur was utterly exhausted, but still wore a smile to keep Tessia from worrying. Even when she asked if he was tired, he lied, saying he was fine, but even a blind person could see he was weakening. As they neared the village, Tessia asked if she could give him a nickname, Accursed One. He teased her back, calling her Highness, but she was serious, wanting him to see her as a friend. Friendship was foreign to Arthur, so his reaction was understandable. Tessia walked ahead and discovered a gap. He didn't notice at first, but she called him back. He had no idea what it was. Before he could react, she hung herself on the edge, reaching out to pull him over. In that moment, Arthur hesitated should he go with her or turn back home. He grabbed her hand and stepped forward together. They reached the other side, and Arthur collapsed onto the ground, utterly spent. Before he could fully recover, armed soldiers surrounded him. They said they had tracked him from the teleportation gate. Immediately, they grabbed him and pressed swords to his throat. He shouted for Tessia, only to see her standing still, expressionless. What was happening? Could his kindness have ended in betrayal? The soldiers demanded to know who allowed a human like him to set foot on their sacred land. Arthur turned to Tessia, hoping she would clarify, but when she stayed silent, he felt stabbed in the back, stupid for ever thinking she was a friend. But it turned out Tessia was just hesitant because she was still so young. When the soldiers declared they would kill Arthur, finally, she spoke up, confirming he had saved her life. Still, the soldiers insisted Arthur had brainwashed Tessia into believing she was rescued. The absurdity was almost laughable. After all, the only wise and sharp mind in the elf lands appeared stepping out of that very teleportation gate and ordered the soldiers to release Arthur. This was Virion Errol, the former king of Eleanor, who personally thanked Arthur for saving Tessia, revealing she was his granddaughter, the princess of this kingdom. Arthur was stunned by this revelation, never imagining Tessia was royalty, judging by her behavior throughout their time together. Tessia's parents, King Anduin and Mario Aralis, soon arrived, finally reunited with their daughter after days apart. While Mario anxiously checked on his daughter's well-being, Anduin questioned what a human was doing here. It seemed Anduin had inherited his mother's intelligence, but lacked his father's wisdom, as he immediately ordered the soldiers to kill Arthur. Virion had to step in to stop the violence, explaining to Anduin that Arthur had saved their precious princess, despite being a mere human. Tessia also voiced support for Virion's words. Van begged her father not to harm her friend, and even suggested inviting Arthur to the royal palace. The idea of a human stepping into the royal palace gave Anduin pause, but Tessia didn't wait for his answer. She walked straight to Arthur, promising that if he came with the royal chefs, they'd make his favourite snacks. Well, bribery like that only works on kids, and Arthur, still a child at heart, as always, couldn't resist. Anduin didn't want to upset his beloved daughter, so he finally agreed. Meanwhile, Virion's curiosity piqued as he sensed a mysterious power within Arthur and requested a private conversation. For now, Arthur followed Tessia through the kingdom of Eleanor, a society crafted with artistry houses perched above and below tree canopies, where people lived simple, peaceful lives. Walking beside Tessia, Arthur caught many curious glances from the crowd, all wondering why a human was here. He couldn't stop thinking about why Tessia had hesitated to help him earlier. What was behind that serious look she gave him? The mystery gnawed at his chest like a piercing ache. Still, he remained cautious, alert to every shadow, determined not to let his guard down. He couldn't shake the question. Why did she hesitate to help before? What had that serious look in her eyes meant? The mystery gnawed at him, a sharp ache in his chest. Still, he stayed vigilant, guarding his heart against any weakness. Finally, they reached the castle at the city's edge. Upon entering, dozens of elf maids greeted Theme, each devoted solely to keeping Tessia smiling. But today, Tessia wanted to repay Arthur, so she commanded every maid to treat him with the utmost hospitality. They tried their best to be hospitable, acknowledging that Atho had saved her life. Yet their hesitation lingered. Tessia, sensing the tension, reassured them that Atho was one of the rare souls truly kind at heart. Then she turned to Atho, asking what he desired: snacks, playtime, lunch, or perhaps a refreshing bath. But before any of that could begin, Atho wished to speak with Tessia's parents about the events in the forest. No one had yet explained clearly what had happened, so he gathered everyone into the meeting room for a serious conversation. Meanwhile, Tessia drifted in her own world, bringing tea and light snacks, perhaps mistaking this tense gathering for a cozy tea party. At last, Anduin officially introduced himself, alongside his wife Marianne and his father Viren, to Atho. Atho, in turn, simply called himself an ordinary boy born. Anyway, Anduin officially introduced himself, along with his wife Marianne and his father Viren, to Atho. Atho also introduced himself as an ordinary child, born in a poor village in the kingdom of Sapin. He knelt before Anduin, admitting that someone as lowly as him would never have the chance to meet royalty, let alone sit in the same room with the elven king, expressing deep gratitude for this opportunity. Anduin was surprised by Atho's education. Although he claimed to be a commoner, the king allowed him to continue. Atho then recounted the details of what had happened, including how he got separated from his family. He didn't lie to the king, but also didn't tell the whole truth. For example, he didn't mention meeting the mysterious dragon named Sylvia. Yet, when the story reached the part where Atho discovered Tessia had been kidnapped by slave traders, the atmosphere in the room shifted completely. Once again, Anduin seized the chance to blame humanity for what the slave traders tried to do to his daughter. Meanwhile, Viren posed a more practical question. How could a 5-year-old child like Atho rescue Tessia from 3 grown slave traders? Surely it wasn't through negotiation or begging. So Atho finally revealed the truth. He said he was a talented mage and had used his power to defeat the slave traders. However, Anduin found it hard to believe, and the guard who had been there earlier butted in with a rude opinion, suggesting that Atho must have brainwashed Tessia just to get into this sacred land. Viren, you've always sided with Atho from the start. This time I can't stand your dirty tricks against him. Anduin snapped at the guard to shut him up. Tessia recalled that terrifying memory and said she had overheard the slave traders discussing selling her for a high price. After Tessia shared what she went through before being rescued by Atho, her mother hugged her tightly, a display of a mother's love that was always beautiful and warm. Anduin also realized what his daughter had suffered and told Atho that he believed him and appreciated everything he had done. After explaining how he had met Tessia, Atho moved on to the main reason for this conversation. He said he was also lost from his family, and the only thing he wished for now was to reunite with his parents in Sapin. Anduin couldn't believe his ears. Atho was seriously asking the elven tribe to help humans, the very people they called man. Yes, Anduin insisted there was no way he would help humans, and Atho needed to understand that he had to find his own way home. But Atho, clever as ever, always found a way to negotiate. He reminded them of everything he had done for their family and their city, and said that if they didn't help after all he had done, then they themselves were the barbarians. They had no right to call humans barbarians if they were no different. Viren looked at Anduin with a scornful expression as if saying, "Gotcha, you've been cornered now." The tension hung thick in the room, a clash not just of words but of worlds, pride, and the fragile hope for understanding. Anduin's stubbornness met Atho's unwavering spirit, a battle of wills, where the fate of a lost child and the bonds between humans and elves hung in the balance. He tells Anduin that he has walked right into the trap he himself laid. Tessia stands beside her father, her eyes locked, waiting to see what choice he will make. Anduin now has no other option. He agrees to help ATH, but warns that the only teleportation gate leading to Sapin can only be opened once every 7 years, and only if all 3 leaders consent. They have just used it recently, so the next opening won't be for another 5 years. Aeth can't wait that long. He can't bear to be separated from his family for 5 more years. Anduin thinks this over and decides to send soldiers to escort Aeth home. The journey will start tomorrow. Aeth feels a flicker of relief upon hearing this, but suddenly his mana core throbs with sharp pain again. He struggles to leave the meeting and goes to take a bath. The pain doesn't subside, it keeps tormenting him. After bathing, he clutches his chest, puzzled about the cause and how to heal it. He thinks of Sylvia and wonders what she would advise him to do about this pain. Sadly, no answer comes. He strolls around the palace, and the fresh air eases the pain slightly. His thoughts drift to his parents, and a deep longing gnaws at him. He wonders if they are still alive, but comforts himself if they're as strong as he believes, they must be all right. When he looks up and sees Tessia with her parents, he wonders if his own family would welcome him so warmly, or if they'd be angry at how long he's been away. These thoughts overwhelm the poor boy, leaving him frozen in place. Tessia runs over to him. He teases her as a pampered princess and tells her to enjoy the love from her parents while she can. Then he confides in her his fears about his own parents and whether they'll be happy to see him return. She places a hand gently on his cheek, embarrassed by how small-minded he seems to be. What does he mean by thinking his parents won't be happy to see him, she wonders. Parents always worry about their children, and she's sure his parents are deeply concerned for him now. As she hugs him, sparkling bellflowers fall softly around them. She looks at them and begins to tell him their story. Seeing her like this, H recalls when he first arrived in the city and suspected she would betray him just judging by her gaze. Now he's glad she returned kindness instead of hatred. But those flowers look strangely familiar to him. He drifts back into his thoughts, questioning what he's really seeing. To her, they are flowers, but to him, they are weapons. He's seen them before during days of battle. He apologizes to her, and she's confused by his meaning. He says he actually likes those flowers too. Then he throws back a bellflower once mistaken as a weapon to the one who sent it. The shock hits him. It's none other than Virion. He asks why Virion would attack his own granddaughter. But Virion just smiles and asks, who could be hurt by something like this? Tessia rushes to Virion's side, pleading with him to stop teasing Aeth, saying Aeth is truly a good boy, unlike others. She begs him to stop bullying him. Virion doesn't see it as bullying. He says this is the first time in his life he's met someone so interesting, and he won't let him leave. Using magic, he sends Tessia back to her seat, then draws a staff to duel Ath, who will win this battle. The fight begins, and Ath gives it his all. He pours all his mana into the battle, but realizes Virion is much faster. No matter how hard he tries, he can't touch Virion. When he attempts an attack, Virion snaps Ath's staff, and a splinter nearly hits Tessia. But Aeth shields her, then decides to use magic. The spell he casts is so powerful that few can survive its impact. Yet, shockingly, old Virion blocks the spell. After many attempts, Aeth finally lands a hit on Virion's head. Virion is wildly shocked, but that only fuels his excitement to fight more. He asks Aeth for one more round. Tessia, now free, runs behind Virion and tells him to leave her ATH alone. Virion says ATH is not the child Tessia thinks he is, and if anyone's bullying here, it's ATH. Ath refuses that label. He says Virion is overestimating him. Virion offers to take him as a disciple. It might be a tempting offer, and honestly, Ath is considering it. But when he thinks about his parents and their worry over his well-being, he declines. He shares his fears with Virion, but Virion reveals there's a way to let his parents know he's safe without going home. Ath probes further, and suddenly Virion injects something into him, to fight. He apologized to Tessia, who, confused, didn't grasp his meaning. He confessed he liked those flowers too. Then he tossed back the flower, which he had regarded as a weapon, to the sender. The shock came when he realized the attacker was none other than Virion himself. He asked why Virion would attack his own granddaughter, but Virion only smiled and questioned, who could such a thing possibly harm? Tessia rushed to Virion's side, pleading for him to stop teasing Aetho, insisting that Aetho was truly a good boy, unlike others. She begged Virion to cease bullying him, yet Virion didn't see it as bullying. He declared this was the first time he'd met someone so interesting in his life, and he wouldn't let him go. Using magic, he sent Tessia back to her seat, then drew a staff to duel with Atho. Who would emerge victorious in this battle? The fight began, and Atho gave it his all. He poured every ounce of his mana into the battle, but realized Virion was far quicker. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't touch Virion. When Atho launched an attack, Virion broke his staff, and a shard nearly struck Tessia. But Atho shielded her, deciding to unleash Magicka's spell so powerful that only a few could survive its blow. Yet, unexpectedly, the old Virion blocked the magic. After many attempts, Atho finally landed a hit on Virion's head. Virion was stunned, truly shocked, but instead of retreating, it only fueled his excitement for the fight. He asked Atho for another round. At that moment, Tessia slipped free from her seat, ran behind Virion, and begged him to leave Atho alone. Virion insisted Atho wasn't the child Tessia believed him to be. If anyone was bullying, it was Atho himself. But Atho refused that label. He said Virion was overestimating him. Virion then suggested taking Aetho as his disciple. It might have been a tempting offer, and honestly, Atho was considering it, but thinking about his parents and their worries, he declined. He shared his concerns with Virion, asking if there was a way to let his parents know he was safe without returning home. Virion hinted there was, then suddenly injected something into Aetho's body. Pain surged through his mana once again, confirming Virion's suspicion. Atho had received the beast's mark. Virion declared the only way Atho could survive was by becoming his disciple. This choice weighed heavily on Atho's shoulders. What fate would he ultimately choose? This episode ends here.